Revealing your desire too soon is like stepping into a game and laying all your cards on the table in that moment. What once fueled you privately becomes exposed, something others can slow shape or even turn against you. The truth is, the world doesn't reward open hunger. It rewards the one who moves with calm precision, the one who builds quietly, and lets results speak louder than words. And that's where Stoic philosophy cuts deep. Real power is not in the grasping, but in the restraint. Strength lies in being unmoved by what you cannot control. So before you voice your hunger, ask, do I need to share this, or do I need to master it? Because the one who contains desire controls it, and the one who controls it cannot be shaken. If you want to walk through life with that kind of clarity and self-mastery, subscribe now and step into your own unbreakable power. Every time you tell someone exactly what you crave, you hand them a handle, something they can grip and pull. You might believe you're simply being honest, but in that moment you've placed part of your future in their hands. And once it's there, they can use it to help you, or to slow you, or to move you in a direction you never planned. Mystery, by contrast, offers nothing to grab. People rarely strike at what they don't understand. They strike at hunger because hunger is predictable when you reveal it. You give them the blueprint. The moment your hunger becomes visible, it becomes measurable, and once it's measurable, it's manageable not by you, but by them. This is how advantage quietly slips away in any form of negotiation. The predictable side is the weaker side. The person who moves without revealing their next step is far harder to block. Blaise Pascal once said, "The less people speak of their greatness, the more we think of it." Silence creates a kind of gravity. It makes people pay attention without you having to demand it. Most people reveal their desires too quickly, not because they want to, but because they crave reassurance. They want to be told they're on the right track, that their goals are valid, that others approve. But that need for validation is exactly what gives the handle away. Carl Jung observed, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." If you're always looking outward for confirmation, you're giving control of your path to others before you've even begun to walk it yourself. Desire itself is not the problem. It's the fuel for creation and progress. But exposed desire is fragile. It becomes subject to other people's timelines, their doubts, even their insecurities. Someone who knows you desperately want a certain role can keep you waiting for it. Someone who senses you're seeking their approval can ration it to keep you chasing. Even well-meaning people may slow you down without realizing it. This is why those who truly understand power rarely announce their intentions. They protect their inner fire, not because they lack ambition, but because they know it burns brightest when shielded. There's a paradox here. The less you talk about what you're building, the more freedom you have to actually build it. Withholding details gives you the space to pivot without judgment, to fail without an audience, and to adapt without pressure. People will always try to fit you into a story they understand. If you reveal too much too soon, you give them the outline, and they'll start writing it for you. If you say little, they're forced to guess, and in their guessing you remain unconfined. This isn't about secrecy for the sake of secrecy, nor about playing manipulative games. It's about ownership. Once your desire leaves your lips, it no longer belongs entirely to you. It becomes open to interpretation and influence. Aristotle wrote, "The self-controlled person is free. Guarding your ambitions until they're strong enough to stand on their own is self-control in action, and with it comes freedom." When you keep your desires contained, you're free to explore them without interference. You can change direction without having to justify yourself. You can succeed without being undermined, and fail without others keeping score. The fire still burns, but it burns where only you can tend it. This doesn't mean never sharing your goals. It means sharing them only when doing so no longer threatens the outcome. Consider the difference between someone who loudly announces they're chasing an opportunity and someone who simply arrives already having secured it. The first invites opinion, distraction, and often resistance. The second commands quiet respect. There's nothing to argue against, because the work speaks before they do. That's the strength of guarding your desires until they've matured into reality. You bypass the obstacles you'd otherwise have to fight through. In the end, the handle you give others is optional. You can hand it over, or you can keep it, but once you give it away, you can't decide how it's used. The Stoics believed that peace doesn't come from getting everything you want, but from mastering how you relate to what you want. The world will always test what it sees. If it sees your hunger, it will test your patience. If it sees your ambition, it will test your endurance. If it sees your weakness, it will test your limits. But if it sees nothing, it has nothing to push against. The strongest position you can hold is one where your desire is known only to you, where your actions are deliberate, but your motives remain your own in that space. You're not being pulled by invisible strings. You're holding them, and the moment you hold them, you decide the game. Once others can see what matters most to you, they can measure you by it. And what they can measure, they can manipulate. It's like carrying around a treasure map with the X marked in bright red. The moment someone else has it, your journey is no longer yours alone. You might believe that being transparent about your dreams makes you authentic or courageous, but transparency without boundaries is an invitation for interference. When your ambitions are visible, they become points of leverage for those who may not share your best interests. They can delay your progress, set traps in your path, or steer you into commitments that benefit them more than you. It's not always done maliciously. Sometimes it's unconscious, born out of jealousy, fear, or their own need for control. But the result is the same. Your steps are no longer entirely your own. When people know exactly what you value, they can subtly shape your behavior. The approval you want can be withheld until you comply. The opportunity you crave can be dangled just out of reach, keeping you running in place. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." In the same way, whoever seeks something precious must be careful not to give others the means to turn that pursuit into a leash. The danger isn't in wanting, it's in letting that want become public property before it's strong enough to survive outside influence in politics, business, even personal relationships. The visible target is the easiest to hit. If people can predict what you'll chase, they can predict how to control you. Think about it. A negotiator who knows you want the deal more than they do will shape the terms to their advantage. A partner who knows you can't bear to lose them can test boundaries with less fear of consequence. A colleague who knows you're after a promotion can subtly undermine you to remove competition. These situations don't require aggression to be effective. They simply require knowledge of your priorities. Knowledge becomes a quiet form of power. Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In this context, if you're unconsciously revealing your core motivations, you might interpret the resulting struggles as bad luck, when in fact they're the product of giving away too much information. The more openly you display what drives you, the easier it becomes for others to adjust the environment in ways that keep you dependent or distracted. There's a subtle but important difference between influence and manipulation. Influence can be mutual and respectful. Manipulation is one-sided and serves the manipulator when your priorities are too visible. You give people the raw material for manipulation. They don't even have to oppose you directly. They can simply offer partial satisfaction, knowing you'll keep moving toward the reward they control over time. This erodes independence. You become reactive rather than proactive, waiting for permission or opportunity instead of creating it yourself. The most strategic individuals often appear calm, detached, and hard to read. This isn't because they lack passion, it's because they've learned the value of containing it. They understand that power flows to those who cannot be easily measured. Aristotle noted, "The more you know, the more you realize you don't know." That humility becomes a shield, allowing you to move without showing all your cards. It's the awareness that not everything must be displayed and that what remains unseen can't be used against you. When you appear unpredictable, you preserve the ability to surprise, to negotiate from strength, and to move without resistance. It's not about hiding everything or becoming so guarded that you can't form trust. It's about deciding when and how much to reveal. A diamond locked away in a vault isn't less valuable because no one sees it. In fact, its security ensures it retains its worth. Likewise, your deepest priorities should be kept where they can grow without premature exposure. Once they're solid, once the groundwork is done, you can bring them into the open from a position of stability rather than vulnerability. The paradox is that when you're less visible in your pursuit, you often appear more powerful. People sense direction, but not destination. They see progress but can't pinpoint motive. This uncertainty works in your favor. It makes others cautious, sometimes even hesitant to interfere because they can't predict how you'll respond. In the space created by their uncertainty, you're free to act decisively. It's tempting to believe that openness will always be rewarded, that the world will meet your honesty with respect, but reality is more complicated. Not everyone will see your goals through the same lens. Some will project their insecurities onto them, some will fear being left behind if you succeed, and some will quietly test how far they can bend you toward their own ends by controlling visibility. You protect against these distortions. You make it harder for others to turn your treasure map into their plan of attack in the end. The less measurable you are, the harder it is for others to shape your path. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that while you cannot control the world, you can control how much of yourself you offer to it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Guarding the visibility of your deepest motives is one of the ways you keep that power. You choose what to share, when to share it, and with whom. You decide whether your treasure map stays in your pocket or becomes a public document. And in that choice lies the freedom to walk your path without anyone else holding the compass." We're told openness is noble, that speaking our desires is courage. It's the kind of advice that sounds warm, safe, and almost universally agreed upon. But if you've lived long enough, you know that courage is not the same as exposure. There's a difference between standing firm in your values and handing over the most intimate details of your inner world for anyone to use as they please. Real courage often looks quieter. It's not the dramatic declaration or the public confession. It's the decision to protect what matters most until it's strong enough to face the world. Words once spoken live outside your control. They take on a life of their own, passed from person to person, altered, questioned, or used in ways you never intended. The belief that saying what you want is always empowering overlooks a hard truth. Once you've revealed it, you can't take it back. It's no longer yours to shape. You may think you're building connection or trust, but sometimes you're building dependency, giving others the tools to influence, slow, or redirect. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Silence is worse. All truths that are kept silent become poisonous." Yet the poison here is not in holding back every truth, but in misjudging which ones are safe to expose. And when there is wisdom and discernment in choosing which truths to share and which to protect until they can stand unshaken. There's a quiet kind of strength in being deliberate with your voice. You might see others broadcasting every goal, every intention, every vulnerability, believing this makes them authentic, and in some settings it can. But in the arenas where power is at stake, whether that's in business relationships or personal ambition, reckless openness is less a badge of courage and more an invitation for interference. When you speak too soon, you open the door for doubt, critique, and manipulation before your idea or goal has the chance to grow. Carl Jung observed, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Many reveal their desires without realizing they're being driven by unconscious needs, the need to be seen, to be approved of, to feel significant. They mistake this impulse for bravery, not realizing it can leave them exposed to forces that don't have their best interests at heart. What feels like a bold move can quickly become a weakness, especially in the hands of someone who knows how to turn your openness into leverage. True courage is not in telling the world everything you want. It's in holding your ground when the world presses you to speak before you're ready. It's in keeping certain ambitions private so they can be pursued without distraction or distortion. Aristotle said patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet in this sense. Self-control in speech is as vital as self-control in action. The freedom comes not from hiding, but from patiently choosing the timing, the audience, and the amount you share, knowing that the right moment will give your words far greater weight. You've probably felt the pull before that urge to announce your plans to gain momentum through public accountability. And sometimes it works, but it also binds you to a path that others now feel entitled to comment on or direct. The more voices in your ear, the harder it becomes to distinguish your own. And once you've tied your motivation to external validation, you risk losing momentum when that validation fades. Openness can become a chain rather than a key. The paradox is that the people we most admire for their strength often reveal the least while they're in the middle of building something important. They don't need to broadcast their every move to feel confident in it. They let the results speak. And because of that, those results carry more weight when you finally see what they've been working toward. It feels inevitable, as though it was always meant to be because you never saw it being weakened by doubt or pushed off course by outside interference. This doesn't mean living in isolation or never sharing your hopes. It means being strategic as you would in any game worth winning. Imagine playing chess and narrating your next move to your opponent before you touch the piece. You wouldn't not because you're afraid, but because it would be foolish to surrender the element of surprise. Life works the same way. You guard certain truths not out of fear, but because they matter enough to protect silence when chosen. With intention is not a lack of courage, it's a shield for what is still in the making. It creates space for you to act without having to justify, defend, or constantly re-explain your position. Marcus Aurelius advised the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Broadcasting your desires too soon places them in the realm of the uncontrollable, where anyone's opinion or action can influence their direction. Keeping them within your control until they're ready gives them the best chance to survive and thrive. The truth is, the world doesn't stop to honor every declaration of intent. It tests it, it pokes at it, questions, it sometimes mocks it. If your goal is still fragile, it may not survive that pressure. But if you wait, if you nurture it in private, strengthen its foundation, prepare it for the challenges ahead, then when it does meet the world, it will stand. And when it stands, it won't matter who questions it, because it won't be dependent on their approval to exist. So courage is not just in the speaking, it's in the waiting, the protecting, the choosing. It's in knowing that not all truths are ready to be carried outside. Some need to be guarded like seeds planted deep and given time to take root before they break the surface. And when they do, they will be far harder to uproot, not because you hid them out of fear, but because you had the courage to give them the protection they deserved. Hunger is something people sense before they see. It's not always about the words you say, it's in your tone, your eyes, the way you react when certain topics come up. People pick up on it instinctively, like an animal catching the scent of food on the wind. And once they recognize that hunger, the dynamic shifts. If they know you're desperate for approval, they'll ration it, giving you just enough to keep you coming back. If they know you're desperate for success, they'll dangle it in front of you, keeping you moving toward their conditions. Even friends can unconsciously do this, not out of cruelty, but because it's human nature to respond to visible need. Where there's hunger, there's an opening, and openings are hard to ignore. The moment your hunger becomes obvious, it becomes leverage, approval, opportunity, recognition. These things can be withheld, delayed, or granted on someone else's terms. They may not even be aware they're doing it. It's simply the way people operate when they know what matters most to you. Seneca once said, "If you would be loved, love yourself at its core." That means learning to be enough without leaning so heavily on the things others can give or take away. Because the more they believe you can't live without their approval or opportunity, the more power they hold in the relationship. Think about the way negotiations work. If one side knows the other is unwilling to walk away, the terms change. The hungrier side accepts less because they fear losing everything. This happens in business, deals, in relationships, in friendships, in careers. When hunger is too visible, you reclaim the power that so many give away without even knowing it. The clearer your intentions, the easier you are to anticipate. And once you're anticipated, you can be countered. Life is not so different from a strategic game. If your opponent knows your next move, they've already started plotting against it before you've even acted. Predictability is the grave of control. It's where momentum goes to die quietly, without you realizing it. People may nod, smile, even encourage you all while making adjustments to ensure you never move faster than they're comfortable with. That's why the person who seems to chase nothing while quietly building everything becomes so dangerous. No one knows where to block, because no one is certain where they're going. This is the paradox of subtlety. The less people can read you, the less they can stop you. A predictable path gives others time to prepare, to place obstacles in your way, to limit your options without your noticing. But an unclear path forces them to wait, to guess, to hesitate. That hesitation is where your power lives. Carl Jung once wrote, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." The person who appears to move without an obvious target is often the one following the deepest order, an order only they can see hidden beneath stillness and misdirection. Predictability is not just about revealing your end goal, it's about revealing your patterns. Maybe it's how you always react to certain challenges. Maybe it's how you announce every step you take thinking it will inspire trust or support over time. Those patterns make you easy to track, and once someone can track you, they can start directing the terrain under your feet. It doesn't take overt sabotage to slow you down. A well-placed delay, a subtle doubt, a small distraction is often enough. Think about competition in sports, in business, in politics. No one shows their playbook to the other side before the game starts, not because they're afraid, but because surprise is one of the few advantages that can't be countered once it's lost. If people can't see your exact route, they can't lay traps along it. And if they can't lay traps, they have no choice but to react once you've already arrived where you intended to go. Philosophers have long understood this principle. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote, "The wise have always said the same things and fools have always done the same things." Predictable people repeat themselves, and in repeating themselves, they make themselves easier to control. When your movements can be mapped from your past behavior, others stop treating you as a factor they must account for and start treating you as a variable. They can manage that. Is the danger of being too transparent with your intentions. You become part of someone else's calculation. There's also a psychological weight to unpredictability. When people can't read you, they often project their own fears or hopes onto you. This can work to your advantage. Instead of revealing your plan, you let them invent one in their own mind. Often, overestimating your reach or influence, their uncertainty, makes them cautious, sometimes even overly cautious, giving you space to move freely. This is the kind of control that doesn't require force. It only requires restraint. Restraint, however, isn't about hiding everything forever. It's about knowing what to reveal and when. The person who appears to reveal nothing can come across as suspicious, even alienating. But the one who reveals selectively small pieces that hint at movement without exposing the full design keeps others interested but never certain. It's the balance between mystery and connection, where people feel close enough to you to stay engaged, but not so close that they can predict your next step. Predictability often comes from a desire for validation. We tell people our plans because we want them to believe in us, to cheer us on, to acknowledge our ambition. But the moment you rely on that external belief, you tie your pace to their approval, and if their approval shifts, so does your momentum. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. The quality of your thoughts improves when they aren't constantly shaped by the reactions of others." Moving quietly allows you to think without the noise of outside opinions steering you off course. There's also freedom in not having to defend every move when people don't know exactly what you're aiming for. They can't demand constant explanations or updates. You're not bound to the version of the plan you announced months ago. You can adapt as circumstances change without having to navigate anyone's disappointment or skepticism. Your direction remains yours alone, and with it, so does your control. The truth is, once you become predictable, you're no longer leading your own course. You're playing inside a system designed by others. They'll know when to apply pressure, when to withhold resources, when to tempt you with shortcuts that serve their ends more than yours. But when you move in ways they can't quite follow, you force them to operate on your timing to respond to your actions. Instead of anticipating them in that subtle shift, you regain the advantage. So the next time you're tempted to broadcast your intentions, in full pause, ask yourself whether revealing them now strengthens your position or weakens it. The one who moves quietly with purpose, hidden beneath stillness, is far harder to stop than the one who shouts their goal from the start line. And when the finish line is crossed before anyone else even knew where it was, there's nothing left for them to block, delay, or dismantle. That's the quiet, enduring power of being unreadable, and the surest way to keep control from slipping into someone else's hands. Announcing your goals, your timelines, your needs, it can feel empowering in the moment. You speak your vision out loud and there's a rush in declaring it. You think it makes you accountable, that it will keep you disciplined, but there's a danger hidden in that feeling. Each word you speak builds a wall you may not see yet. Little by little, those declarations form the boundaries of a cage. The moment people know exactly what you've set out to do, they begin to measure you against it. And once they have that script, they will consciously or unconsciously make sure you keep performing it, even if you've outgrown it, or want to take a different path. It doesn't happen with malice. Most of the time, friends, colleagues, even family might believe they're encouraging you. They remind you of what you said, they ask for updates, they hold you to timelines you gave when you were in a different mindset. But what if those timelines no longer serve you? What if the goal itself has evolved? The cage of your own words leaves little room for quiet adaptation. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "No one can build you the bridge on which you, and only you, must cross the river of life." Yet when you've handed over your plans, you've invited others to start building that bridge for you in their style, at their pace, for their idea of where you should end up. There's also the problem of perception. Once you've made your intentions public, you're no longer free to fail quietly. Every misstep becomes visible, and every change of direction risks being seen as weakness or inconsistency. The truth is, most people are more comfortable holding you to your past words than watching you change in real time. When you announce a dream, you've given it a shape in their minds, and if you try to reshape it later, they may resist. Not because it's wrong, but because it disrupts the story they've built around you. Carl Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That acceptance includes the freedom to evolve without permission. Something that's harder to claim when you've promised the world a fixed version of yourself. If they don't know whether you'll wait, pivot, or move on, they're forced to treat you with more respect. Uncertainty keeps you valuable. Building that posture starts from within it. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about actually creating a life where you're not dependent on one outcome. Diversify your opportunities, strengthen your skills, build your self-worth on something deeper than someone else's approval or a single door opening. The less you lean on one thing to validate you, the less leverage anyone has over you in personal relationships. This dynamic is just as real when someone knows you'll tolerate anything to keep them. They'll test how far that tolerance goes, sometimes without even realizing it. But when you carry yourself in a way that says, "I want you, but I don't need you," the entire interaction changes. Respect grows because they know you are there by choice, not by dependence. That choice makes your presence more meaningful. The same holds true in business. The entrepreneur who can turn down bad investors waits for the right ones. The professional who can say no to underpaid work gets better offers. The negotiator who can step back from a deal that feels wrong is the one who eventually finds a better one. This isn't luck. It's the result of refusing to let need dictate decisions in the end. The posture of needing nothing is less about denying desire and more about mastering it. It's about letting your wants fuel you without letting them chain you. The moment you realize you could walk away and still be whole is the moment you stop being negotiable in the wrong ways, and from there, every agreement you make in love and work in life comes from strength, not from the fear of losing what you think. You can't live without silence. Forces others to imagine what you might be doing. It leaves empty spaces. Their minds feel compelled to fill, and often they fill those spaces with assumptions that work in your favor. They start to project their own fears, doubts, or even admiration onto you. Some will imagine you're building something far greater than you actually are. Others will worry your planning moves. They can't see in that uncertainty. You gain freedom. Freedom to act without resistance. Freedom to change direction without having to explain yourself. The less they know, the less they can interfere. And the more space you have to operate on your own terms. When you speak too soon, you give away the shape of your plans. And once people see the shape, they start looking for the weak points. Even well-meaning people can sow doubt or distraction, not because they wish you harm, but because their opinions and fears inevitably become part of the conversation. The more voices you invite in, the more your path bends to fit them. Silence removes that problem. It allows you to develop ideas without distortion, to build without the weight of external expectation in negotiations. Silence is often the most potent move. The person who can wait out the other side's discomfort gains the upper hand. People rush to fill silence with concessions, explanations, or mistakes. It's human nature to interpret quiet as pressure. Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." This inability extends to interaction. Silence forces reflection, and reflection can be uncomfortable. That discomfort often leads to overcompensation, which you can use to your advantage. But silence is not about isolation or cutting yourself off from the world. It's about knowing when speaking serves you and when it serves others at your expense. There's a difference between being secretive and being strategic. Strategic. Silence has intent behind it. It is deliberate, purposeful, and often temporary. You may be silent now so that you can speak later from a position of undeniable strength. The key is timing, revealing only when it strengthens your position, rather than weakens it in personal relationships. Silence can reset dynamics that have tipped too far in one direction. When someone is used to constant updates, attention, or reassurance from you, pulling back disrupts the pattern. They begin to notice the absence and wonder about its meaning. This wondering can shift the balance of respect, making them reconsider how they engage with you. It's not about playing games. It's about no longer feeding a dynamic that drains you. Silence also gives you the rare advantage of surprise in a world where everyone is broadcasting their every thought and move. The person who keeps something to themselves becomes unpredictable. Predictability is easy to counter. Unpredictability keeps people cautious. They can't prepare for what they can't see coming, and because they don't know, they hesitate, and in hesitation, they leave gaps you can move through without resistance. There's discipline in choosing silence. It requires you to resist the urge to defend yourself when criticized, to explain yourself when misunderstood, to seek validation when uncertain. These impulses are natural, but acting on them often trades long-term influence for short-term relief. By holding back, you preserve your leverage. You force others to draw their own conclusions, and often those conclusions grant you more credit than your words could have earned. Of course, silence is not a cure. There are moments when clarity and communication are necessary, when your voice must be heard to set boundaries or seize opportunities. The skill lies in knowing which moments build your position and which moments erode it. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you know your own tendencies, whether you speak too soon, explain too much, or reveal too freely, you can correct them, using silence as a counterbalance. In the end, silence is a weapon because it creates space, and space is power. It's in that space that others begin to wonder, overthink, and sometimes even dismantle their own positions without you lifting a finger. It's in that space that you can observe without being observed, plan without interference, and act without warning. The less you give away, the more control you keep. And when you do finally choose to speak, your words will carry the weight of everything. You didn't say. You can want deeply and act decisively, but keep the flame behind glass. Desire that burns in the open is vulnerable. It can be blown out by doubt, by resistance, by the small but constant winds of other people's opinions. But when it's shielded, when it's tended quietly, the heat builds in a way that no outside force can touch. The world doesn't need to see your fire while it's still fragile. It only needs to see it when it's strong enough to stand on its own. By then, it's not just a flicker of possibility. It's a force that looks inevitable, almost untouchable, as though it was always meant to happen. The instinct to share is powerful. We want to talk about what excites us, to seek encouragement, to let others know we're moving towards something meaningful. But in doing so, we often expose the most delicate stage of our growth. The stage when a single careless word from someone else can make us question the whole thing. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That becoming is a private process before it is ever a public one. It takes time to build something worthy of the world's attention, and rushing that exposure can rob it of the protection it needs to take shape. There is a strength that comes from working without the constant gaze of others, when no one is watching. You're free to experiment without judgment, to make mistakes without them being tallied against you, to adapt without having to explain every change. The flame grows stronger in the quiet, because it's fed by focus, not distraction. You don't waste energy defending your ideas before they're ready. You don't burn fuel keeping the fire alive for show. Every bit of heat goes into building something real. When you keep your desires private, you also protect them from being distorted. Even well-meaning people can bend your vision in ways you didn't intend. They offer advice, they make comparisons, they project their own fears, and suddenly the fire you started no longer looks like the one you imagined shielding. It means you choose what influences it. You decide which ideas feed it and which ones starve it. In this way, you remain the sole keeper of its direction. Seneca wrote, "As is a tale, so is life, not how long it is, but how good it is." The same could be said for ambition. It's not about how loudly you speak it, but how well you build it. There's also an element of power in the reveal. When the world only sees the finished form, it creates a sense of inevitability, as though the result was never in doubt. People rarely see the long nights, the uncertainty, the false starts. All they see is the outcome. And because of that, they perceive it as effortless, even fated. This perception adds weight to your presence. It turns your accomplishments into something others admire, even envy, because they can't trace the steps back to their beginning. Working behind glass doesn't mean working in isolation. It means working with intention about what you share, and when you can still seek insight, still learn from others. But you do it with the awareness that not every opinion is worth inviting in. You recognize that some conversations strengthen your focus while others scatter it, and you choose the ones that keep the fire concentrated rather than diluted. Aristotle said, "Well, begun is half done." The quiet work behind the scenes gives you room to start well, to build the right foundation, without the pressure of appearing certain before you actually are. The discipline to keep something private until it's ready is rare in a world obsessed with constant updates. Social media conditions us to broadcast progress before it's even substantial. But each broadcast hands a piece of your fire to the outside world, where it can be judged, questioned, or misunderstood. Over time, this can drain the energy that should be fueling the work itself. The strongest flames are those that are fed steadily without being exposed to the cold air too soon. When the moment finally comes to show what you've built, it arrives without warning. The suddenness is part of its impact. People are caught off guard because they never saw the process, only the result, and because they didn't see it coming, they can't trace the vulnerabilities and how it was made. They can't identify where to challenge it or how to dismantle it. All they can do is acknowledge it, because by the time they see it, it's already too late to stop it. The world respects what it can't easily touch. A fire that's been protected and cultivated over time doesn't just illuminate it. Radiates a kind of certainty that can't be faked. It carries the weight of every decision you made to protect it. Every moment you resisted the temptation to expose it. Too soon, it becomes not just an achievement, but a testament to the patience and discipline that made it possible in the end. Keeping the flame behind glass is not about secrecy for its own sake. It's about stewardship. It's about recognizing that the things that matter most need space to grow without constant interference. And it's about understanding that when the fire finally meets the air, it should be so strong, so well formed that nothing can extinguish it. That is when it feels inevitable. That is when it becomes untouchable. And that is when the world will believe it was always meant to be revealing. Your next move makes you reactive the moment others know where you're headed. They can begin shaping the terrain ahead of you. They can lay obstacles in your path, slow your progress, or steer you into battles you didn't choose. But when you keep that move to yourself, you change the nature of the game. You're no longer responding to what has been placed in front of you. You're deciding when and how the pieces will shift. That's the difference between being a pawn and being a player. A pawn reacts to the hand that moves it. A player decides. The movement, the strategy, and the timing and power in its truest form isn't about killing your desire. It's about containing it until it can't be broken. Containment doesn't mean suppression. You still feel the pull, the hunger, the vision of what you're moving toward, but you hold it steady away from prying eyes until the time is right. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." That clarity can't be given to you by the crowd. It comes in silence and restraint, in the deliberate decision to keep certain intentions out of reach. This isn't about being secretive for the sake of mystery. It's about safeguarding your momentum from interference, because the more people know, the more they can influence the course you take. The person who always reveals their next step loses the ability to adapt freely. Every change of direction becomes a contradiction to something they've already declared. Every delay looks like failure, and soon they're not adjusting their plan based on wisdom or opportunity. They're adjusting it to protect their image. That's how someone slips from player to pawn without realizing it. They're still moving, still active, but the pace and direction are being dictated by the eyes watching them. When you hold your moves close, you create a different kind of pressure, not on yourself, but on those around you. People become uncertain. They can't predict your actions, so they hesitate. That hesitation gives you room to maneuver, to advance while they're still guessing in chess. Unpredictability forces your opponent to waste moves on defense, reacting to threats, they can't quite define in life. The same principle applies. A well-placed silence, a withheld detail, a quiet progression can change the balance of power more effectively than any bold announcement. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you no longer feel compelled to reveal your direction. You start making decisions from a place of strength rather than a need for validation. You're not looking for permission or applause. You're focused entirely on the move itself, not on how it will be perceived. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." In this sense, freeing yourself from the imagined need for constant approval means valuing your own process enough to protect it from unnecessary exposure. It means trusting that the work you're doing will speak loud enough when it's ready. This doesn't mean you never share your plans. It means you choose the timing. You reveal only when doing so adds strength to your position, not when it gives others an advantage over you. There's power in surprise in arriving with something complete that no one had the opportunity to sabotage or dilute when the outcome appears. Suddenly, people are left wondering how you did it, and that uncertainty makes them cautious about challenging you. The transition from pawn to player is as much about mindset as it is about strategy. A pawn accepts the conditions it's given. A player shapes them. That shift begins when you stop giving away the map to your intentions. Even in close relationships, this approach can be vital. When you tell someone every move before you make it, you invite their expectations, their timelines, and their pressures into your decision-making. Sometimes they mean well, but good intentions don't remove the weight of influence by holding certain things for yourself. You preserve the space to grow in the direction you know is right, not the direction others are most comfortable with. The real art is in knowing what to share and what to guard. Some details are harmless to discuss, others are foundational and should remain protected until they are too strong to be broken. Like a seed beneath the soil, your goals need darkness before they can withstand the light. The moment you pull them out too soon to show them off, you risk stunting their growth. When you give them time to root deeply, they can weather any storm. In the end, being a player in your own life means moving with intent, but without broadcasting your every step. It means understanding that your desire is precious and that exposing it too soon is like placing it in someone else's hands. Contain it, protect it, and let it build until it becomes undeniable. Because when you reveal it at the right moment, it won't be something fragile that can be contested. It will be something complete, solid, and beyond the reach of those who might try to stop it. That's when you've stopped being a pawn. That's when you've taken control of the game. In the end, the strength you keep is the strength you can use. Guard your vision, protect your fire, and move only when the ground beneath you is unshakable. If this spoke to you, watch one of the videos on your screen to take the next step in sharpening your mind and strengthening your resolve. And thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal, where we walk the path of discipline, wisdom, and purpose together.